Chelsea and trophies. They used to go hand in hand.
He left in 7th.
But today, they are nothing more than mid-table mediocrity. Over $1 billion Boehly bucks spent without a trophy to show for it. In contrast to Roman Abramovic's pride of London, they had won it all. So what went wrong? The Todd Boehly and Clear Lake £4 billion takeover in May 2022 was where it all started to go wrong, right? No. It is easy to blame the new ownership for the current disaster happening, and there's good reason to. But the roots of Chelsea's downfall lie deeper and further back in time, back to the final years for Abramovich at Chelsea. But how, you ask? They won loads. Chelsea won the Premier League 5 times through his 19-year reign, a commendable achievement. But the truth is that in his last 4 seasons, even getting top 4 was a struggle, averaging 69.75 points per season. For context, on average, it takes 72 points to get 4th place in the Premier League. So Chelsea started to crack under Abramovich. But why? And how comparable is it to the current situation under Boehly? Chelsea teams in the latter stage of the Abramovich era had incredible players: Diego Costa, Courtois, Eden Hazard and N'Golo Kante, but they became a mismatch of different managers' styles. The obvious example is any Conte signing, like Marcos Alonso, who, despite being pivotal in the 16-17 title-winning season, became a leech on the Tuchel side. David Luiz, perfect for a back 5 system, then becomes unprotected in a Frank Lampard defence. Even a Sarri signing like Pulisic, who, despite seeing flashes of brilliance during lockdown like that goal against Man City, became a fairly bit-part player that needed to move on from the club. Overspending was a problem back then too. Pulisic cost £58 million in the same season that saw Mahrez move to Man City for only $9 million more. Romelu Lukaku, almost the catalyst for the club's issues, cost a record £97.7 million. But was he any better than the far cheaper Nicholas Jackson? Or was the £60 million Alvaro Morata far more effective? It'd feel like lying to say so. Even despite all this overspending, the squad still saw huge gaps. For example, the midfield got neglected as Roman's last squad had an ageing midfield of Kante and Jorginho. Both on paper very good players, but it saw Chelsea ineffective against low blocks. Players like Malang Sarr were starting in defence, Azpilicueta switching across the back line to fit in for the injury-prone fullbacks James and Chilwell. There was even a period where Ruben Loftus-Cheek filled in at centre-back. The transfer and recruitment structure was different to the layered team today, with Joe Shields, Winstanley and Stewart, but arguably as ineffective. Previously, where Marina Granovskaya and Petr Cech suffered from the vision of short-term success, today the recruitment gets lost in the vision of long-term success. Abramovich was famous for the hire and fire approach to management and was so trigger happy that he went through 15 different managers. His ruthless approach no doubt won trophies, even his last appointment of Thomas Tuchel won the Champions League in 2021, but it has set a culture for Chelsea fans. A culture of impatience. There's no doubt that Boehly's managers have been poor and below Chelsea's standard, but his ideation of a long-term project completely contradicts the fans' belief biting the bullet to win the next available trophy. This has led to a fairly toxic fan base who get more excited for transfer windows than they do actual games. The importance of Thomas Tuchel cannot be underestimated. To put it simply, he papered over the cracks of Chelsea. He represented the club, speaking how a Chelsea manager should.
We will build a team that nobody wants to play against.
And he fell in love with the club and the fans.
If not, we go by train. If not, we go by bus. If not, I drive a 7-seater, honestly. I will do.
And protected the club during the very end of Roman Abramovich's era, as sanctions were put on the club that led to painful turmoil. To quickly summarise some of his best achievements as a Chelsea manager, that night in Porto, he won Chelsea's second Champions League in 2021. He took Chelsea to 4 finals of the 5 cup competitions in which he managed the club. His only non-final elimination since 2019 in any cup was extra time versus Real Madrid. And he revived players like Rudiger and Jorginho's Chelsea careers. Tuchel was achieving top 4 results with teams that featured Aubameyang, Azpilicueta and Ziyech, and steadied the ship under the Boehly and Clear Lake takeover. After a long ruling term of sanctions, no fans in the stadium or revenue to Abramovich, a buyer was found in Todd Boehly's Clear Lake consortium. With no football experience, only owning the LA Dodgers, their ownership has been ambitious but undeniably misguided. They set out to make change at Chelsea, ostracising the fans from the club they love. This was shown no further than sacking Thomas Tuchel 100 days into their ownership. A distinct milestone, a disruptive turning point that showed fans at face value the new ownership's cluelessness. Their own club statement described this as the right time to make this transition, and what a downward spiral of a transition it was. Tuchel's sacking should have been a warning sign of mediocrity to come, and his fallout with the owners foreshadowed their inexperience in football. Boehly put more of the onus of signings on Tuchel, when he simply wanted to focus on the footballing side of management. This left him with a dysfunctional side that he felt was like an academy team. For context, Tuchel was sacked when Chelsea was 6th in the league. They finished 12th and would have been relegated without Tuchel's 10 points. The new owners had the option of hiring Zinedine Zidane, a three-peat Champions League winner, but instead opted for project manager Graham Potter, the antithesis of a Chelsea manager. Chelsea have an embarrassment of riches, the glaring issue having spent over £1 billion. Some obvious poor transfers like Kalidou Koulibaly, £72 million on Wesley Fofana. Cucurella and Caicedo from Brighton cost a combined £175 million. It's got to be remembered that if it wasn't for the Saudi League emerging and then buying a string of poorly performing players, Chelsea could be in serious financial dire currently. They've also failed by selling Cobham graduates like Mason Mount for £60 million and possibly Gallagher. This is because selling academy players counts as pure profit when tackling financial fair play rules. This emphasises that they don't care for the soul of the club or the culture that saw players like John Terry captain the team. However, it should be mentioned that Abramovic sold academy players too, like Fikayo Tomori, Mark Gahey and Jamal Musiala. These were all players that would easily make Chelsea's current starting 11. Their recruitment is focused on younger players, with a rule of signing players under 25. This saw them reject James Maddison, a dying breed of game-changing number 10s with an ability to carry a game by himself, much like Eden Hazard. The new owner's scattergun approach is profit over performance, hoping one of their 20 young signings makes it big and turns over a huge profit. The use of the amortization loophole, signing players on 8-year contracts to spread the inflated transfer fees, feels naive and dangerous. The rules have now been changed to combat this, with Premier League clubs agreeing that transfer fees can't be spread over more than 5 years. If you go through Chelsea's findings and their transfer fees, amortized or not, and ask whether or not they'll be worth it, you'd find more flops than future stars. Let's take Mykhailo Mudryk. Up to £89 million with add-ons, he hasn't exactly set the world alight. He was poor and underutilised under Potter and Lampard, but he's showing better decision-making under Pochettino. Still, overall, I'd say flop. Moises Caicedo, £115 million. Young but experienced. But I think Caicedo falls under a series of Brighton players who leave and flop, as they exceed under Brighton's specific style of play. Definitely a flop for me. Enzo Fernandez, £106.8 million. He's a World Cup winner with Argentina, and he changed their team after the initial Saudi Arabia loss and looked bright even in the darkest Chelsea games. Probably a future star. Wesley Fofana, £70 million. A continuously injured centre-half who hasn't set the world alight when fit either. A humongous overpay who will probably be sold at a massive loss if his injuries persist. Flop. Compared to smarter signings in the current Premier League climate, like Mohamed Kudus for £37 million or $30 million for João Pedro, even Pau Torres commanding Villa's defence for £32 million, it's hard to look at Chelsea for any value for money signings. Cole Palmer for £42 million looks smart now, but was a huge gamble at the time, given his lack of playing time at Manchester City. Chelsea should be looking to either spend big on experienced players, not youngsters coming off purple patches in specific tactical setups. The Boehly era continues. I think their reign will be shorter than Abramovic's, as they'll look to sell when most profitable, and despite it being poor so far, there could be a positive future. Although Chelsea are mid-table now, fans should seek optimism in players like Cole Palmer, Benoit Badiashile and Christopher Nkunku, and be grateful for glory of the past, whilst taking it win by win until trophies return to the pride of London. If you did enjoy, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.